What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pit Limiter Podcast. This is episode number 8. Wow, we're already up to episode number 8. That's crazy. I'm your host, Zach Buchanan. Joining me, as always, John Poole III. What's up, buddy?
8 is for Dale Jr., Redneck Jesus. So yeah, we're making progress.
Or just any driver from Kannapolis, North Carolina, Daniel Hemrick.
Oh, forgot about Daniel Hemrick. Oops.
Yeah, it's not like he's running in the Cup Series this year or anything. John's actually back for a consecutive week. I think this is the second consecutive week?
Second, third, I can't.
Whatever, yeah.
I lost count.
Yeah, me too. It's not like it matters anyways. Let's dive right into our favorite segment. We've got a juicy stop and go for you. And John Poole, what do you got for us?
Everybody's favorite NASCAR driver, Kyle Busch, sweeps the Xfinity Series and Truck Series races at Texas.
Much to everybody's dismay, clearly, Kyle Busch did not win the Cup race on Sunday, despite leading the most laps. It was Denny Hamlin who overcome 2 pit road penalties and actually missing pit road once to win the Cup race. It was his 3rd win at Texas.
So some interesting stats about passing regarding yesterday's Cup race. A new record for the fewest laps led by a driver to lead the most laps. Kyle Busch only led 66 laps and captured that extra point for leading the most laps. Also, green flag passes at Texas were up 83% race to date, from 1902 to 3,489, and it also ranked as the 5th highest passing ever recorded at Texas Motor Speedway since the stat has been recorded in 2005.
So Formula One had its 2nd race of the season on Sunday. Lewis Hamilton took home the victory in the Bahrain Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc actually started on the pole and had a mechanical malfunction, and actually, thanks to a timely yellow from a double retirement by the Renault camp, actually sealed the deal for Leclerc to get his first F1 podium. Valtteri Bottas finished 2nd, and Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel rounded out the top 5.
There's some interesting news this week coming from KBM of all places. Former series champion Greg Biffle will run the KBM number 51 truck at Texas in June. Now, to prepare for this outing for Kyle Busch Motorsports, Greg Biffle actually hopped into Kyle's truck during the first practice for about a half hour and was relatively quick.
So, Joe Gibbs Racing announced that Harrison Burton is going to hop up to the Xfinity Series for a couple races this year. He's going to drive the number 18 Dex Toyota in 8 races in 2019.
Some broadcasting news. Darrell Waltrip is actually considering retirement. Now, this should not come as a shock to anybody. He has been in the booth for almost 19 years. And that an announcement could be coming in the next few weeks regarding his status next year.
Something that was announced on Twitter in the past week that was a big shock to everybody, and honestly really sad to hear. John Andretti, who had been battling cancer the last couple years, announced that it has returned once again, and they're currently searching for answers and for options. And as in his own words, he's started back on the hashtag chemo coaster again.
So after a failed attempt at fixing qualifying, NASCAR is considering going back to single car qualifying for the Cup Series at Speedway tracks. Steve O'Donnell was asked about the change, and he said, quote, It won't be popular with some of our owners, but unfortunately we are being put in this position," end quote.
So Austin Wayne Self was indefinitely suspended by NASCAR for violation of the substance abuse policy. He was not at the Martinsville race, and so people actually thought that he was let go by the team before the Martinsville race. He actually failed the drug test before Martinsville. He submitted a B sample which was tested last week, which is why we just found out about it this week.
Oh, Nelson Piquet Jr., former F1 racer, NASCAR racer, etc., has been doing Formula E, actually was its series first champion, has left Jaguar Racing effective immediately. There's no news of why he is leaving. He just says that he's happy with, or he's not met his expectations or the team's expectations, and Alex Lynn will be set to replace him.
So something that was reported by Adam Stern, actually pretty interesting. Levine Family Racing is open to adding a second car. In fact, Bob Levine said they would absolutely do it, and they were going to run 2 cars this season with Daniel Suarez and a driver that they selected, but that didn't work out. He said, quote, "It's just a matter of sponsorship because we can put the people on it and we have the organization, and Toyota Racing Development will support that. So yes, we are working to expand."
And the final bit of stop and go, which we kind of alluded to last week on the podcast, NASCAR actually announced their 2020 schedule. And a lot of the rumors that we discussed last week did come true. And with that, I think we're going to transition into our first discussion topic, and that is, well, the schedule for 2020.
So the 2 major changes that were announced was Indianapolis, the Brickyard 400, has been moved to July 4th weekend, and the summer Daytona race, the second Daytona race of the season, has now been made the playoff cutoff race in September. Very interesting. And for all you kart racers out there, that now means the USAC karting battle at the Brickyard is no longer going to be 4th of July weekend. Thanks, NASCAR. Other than that, there's also... Here, let me get the schedule pulled up real quick.
I actually have a list of changes for you, so I'm just going to run it down chronologically as it occurs. So, as we alluded to, West Coast Swing is now after Daytona again. Great change. Atlanta has been moved to race 5, so it gets a little bit warmer date. We'll probably get a little bit better racing. This one is the biggest one. Homestead moves to race 6 on the schedule. Homestead, since its inception, minus a couple of truck races that were companion events with kart, Homestead races have been generally in November, and that's it. So that moves to race 6 in late March. Richmond's first race is actually a day race now. The first Martinsville has moved to Mother's Day, but it's going to be a night race at Martinsville.
Good move.
Great move. Pocono, instead of having two weeks per se, where the races occur, will have a double header. Now with this double header, there is going to be an ARCA race, a truck race, and an Xfinity race also within time frames, so I have no idea.
That's going to be insane.
I have no idea how that's going to work.
I don't know how they're going to have the garage space for it.
As Zach said, Indy is moving to 4th of July weekend. At the request of NBC, there are 2 weeks off now for NASCAR due to the Summer Olympics. Dover has fallen out of the chase. It is now the second race before the cutoff, before Daytona. And the entire chase has been turned on its head. Would you like to talk about that, by chance?
All right, so let's start with Labor Day weekend. All right, the Southern 500, which finally, a couple years back, got its historic date, its historic weekend, after NASCAR screwed that up. That's starting off the playoffs now. We've got Richmond Raceway, the second race of the playoffs, which thankfully NASCAR put them in the playoffs last year. And then to round out round 1 of the playoffs, we've got Bristol. Yeah, the Bristol night race is in September now, and it's a part of the playoffs, and I think the first round, really, that's killer. NASCAR could not have gotten that more right. Round 2, you've got Vegas, Talladega, and Charlotte. The Charlotte Roval is the cutoff race once again, so that's going to be a pretty interesting round. And then the round of 8, you've got Kansas, Texas, and Martinsville. And the finale is at ISM Raceway in Phoenix, Arizona, which those renovations that they made make a lot more sense now. I'm not going to say I agree with ISM getting a finale, but I mean, if that means it changes it up a little bit, so be it.
Now, I will say that I love the chase and
Yes.
the dates that are in there now.
Yes.
Darlington, it's one of a kind. Richmond, it's a Saturday night short track race. Bristol, I didn't think I would say that Bristol in the chase is going to be epic. It is going to be epic. Tempers are going to be flaring.
And it's a cutoff race.
It is a cutoff race. So you could technically say round one is your downforce tracks. Definitely downforce tracks. Then you go to Vegas, Dega, Roval. You have two tracks that are kind of not downforce, and then you have the Roval. I mean, we saw last year. We haven't got to this year yet. Excuse me. The Roval was crazy. Absolutely crazy. And then round of 8, it's a little weaker with Kansas and Texas. But Martinsville closing it out, I mean, other than ISM being the championship race, I really can't complain. I honestly can't complain.
Yeah, if we're looking at this schedule as a whole, other than Daytona and Indianapolis, I'd say they got this schedule about as good as you could possibly get it while keeping the same tracks and relatively the same amount of weekends in the season. I completely agree with having the 2 weeks off for the Olympics. It just complies with NBC. It's good for your partnership with them. It also means you don't have to find somebody to fill in for Rick Allen. Which, I mean, Lee Diffie did a stand-up job. I think what he called, was it Watkins Glen in Michigan last year?
Yes, and I think he did great.
He did great, honestly. He could call any race, honestly. Like NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, F1. He's done it all. He's a stand-up guy. He's a legend. But NASCAR fans weren't too into having a foreign commentator call the races, I guess.
As the brilliant NASCAR fan said, a British person commentating NASCAR.
Yeah, and he's Australian. That's hilarious. Hey, it really shows you how educated NASCAR fans are.
Yes, sometimes they can be quite intelligent.
So looking at, the rest of these changes, Atlanta getting moved, I completely agree with that. Really, the only thing that I would have changed other than Daytona and Indy is I would have put Sonoma in March. And I said this last week, Sonoma looks so beautiful in the spring. You look at the track in June versus what it looks like in the spring, and other than the layout of the actual asphalt, it looks completely different. And I think the racing would be a little bit different too. But, that's just me.
Well, here's the crazy thing, though. We still don't know if this change back to the full course layout for the Cup cars is going to be a permanent thing or it's going to be a year thing. Because Sonoma hasn't said either way it's going to be on this is a 1-year deal or as we're moving forward deal. So we have no idea what version of the track we're going to see next year.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they did not change the amount of laps that they're running.
No, they did not.
Which that's a lot. To run that layout with 110, I don't even think IndyCar ran that many laps there.
I would not know. I could do some research.
But regardless, I will say, and I know John and I kind of went off about this last week, why it doesn't make sense for Daytona and Indy to get flip-flopped. I will say, when you look at the Brickyard 400, and this race has been around, we're going on the 25th anniversary of it this year?
Yeah, I believe so.
The 25th anniversary, all right? Last year was the 25th race. This year's the 26th. It's the 25th anniversary. It's a crown jewel event, all right? NASCAR got this wrong with the Southern 500, 15 years ago, I think it was, when they decided to move it?
Yeah, 15 years ago this year, yeah.
Every crown jewel race has a significant date on the calendar. The Daytona 500 is in February. It's the first race of the year. The Coke 600 is on Memorial Day weekend, undoubtedly one of the greatest weekends in motorsports of the whole year. The July Daytona race wasn't a crown jewel, but it was a staple for the July 4th weekend. The Southern 500, until NASCAR messed it up 15 years ago, was always on Labor Day weekend. And then the oddball of the bunch, the redheaded stepchild, I guess if you want to call it that, was the Brickyard 400. I think it was always in August until a couple years ago when they decided, we're going to put it in July. And then last year it was in September. Now it's back in July, and I can't see anybody wanting to go to this race in the middle of July. I mean, last year's race was pretty decent, being in September. I know it was a green track. It had just rained the day before. It was a little cooler. Completely different package from what we're running this year. But regardless, I think it takes away from the race itself, the meaning of winning the Brickyard 400. I mean, winning at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway means a lot. And regardless, it doesn't matter what you're racing, it's going to mean a lot to win there. But I think it takes something away from the Brickyard 400 if you keep moving the dates around. You know, it doesn't have a consistent date. I think it takes something away from that a little bit.
Well, and I mentioned this in a video, and I might have said this last week, that it was kind of a crap crown jewel, and that was unfair to say. That was really unfair to say. But yeah, they just haven't appreciated Indianapolis, and I could say that it's not Indianapolis's fault, because they've proven that they can put on great races. I mean, look at IndyCar. You just have to have the right package with each track.
And the Brickyard 400s even had some good races. I mean, 2018 was pretty good, but I mean, even if you look back into the past, you've had some good Brickyard 400s.
Exactly. It's just, with the cars the way they are right now, not this year's package, just in general.
The Gen 6 car.
The Gen 6, it's not very conducive to good racing.
Yeah.
At speedway tracks, it creates so much dirty air, and it's so aero dependent, you can't really do anything with it.
And I mean, I've seen insane theories and ideals on what they should do. They should race at IRP instead of having the Brickyard 400 at IMS. They should run the infield road course at IMS instead of having the Brickyard 400. And I'm thinking, gosh, I mean, they make it seem like this isn't a tradition. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not like it's the Indy 500 that's been around for going on, 103 years now? But it's been around for 25. I mean, it's not as many as the Daytona 500. It's not as many as the Southern 500. It's not as many as Martinsville. Yeah, but it's 25 years. It's a crown jewel race. It's a tradition. And traditions usually have a specific date, and this race does not. And I think it takes away from it.
Now, there was something curious that I'm going to get back to with schedule. We did not have the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series schedules announced. They said they'll come within the next week or so. Now, there were some rumors that we had from a couple of sources within the Indianapolis Star that IMS and NASCAR could be in a power play with one another. They're kind of ticked off that their date got moved again to July the 4th, and possibly could put them into a doubleheader-esque weekend where they could run the infield road course and the oval in the same weekend. I don't know how that would work, but that is a prevailing rumor right now with the Star.
Yeah, that'd be pretty odd to see.
And which would mean, where does the Xfinity Series go? I mean, we know that Raceway Park is currently getting renovations, but would they be available in time for next year?
I think it's not even if they'll be ready in time. I think it's just a NASCAR. NASCAR just sees that there's a bigger market for them to have a race, even though it'll probably be a worse race for them to have a race at the Brickyard versus having it at Raceway Park, which the better race would be at IRP, regardless. I know it's not called IRP anymore, but I mean that's what it is.
Lucas
But
Oil. I don't even know. Lucas
Lucas,
Oil
yeah,
Raceway.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Well, let's just call it
It,
Raceway Park.
yeah.
Easier that way. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
that
Nashville.
short track in Indianapolis that
It's in
creates better
Claremont.
racing.
It's in
Yeah.
Claremont, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I think one thing that I was kind of hoping for with the doubleheader announcement for the Pocono race was that we'd have uh, a stacked weekend of ARCA, trucks, and Xfinity by themselves, like a standalone weekend. And I don't know how that would play out, how they'd be able to make it work. But if it was early enough in the season, uh, that would be an all Fox weekend if you're looking at television broadcasts, because Fox has the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series until Daytona, I believe. Or well, no, not Daytona, but it would
It's
be
like 16,
Indianapolis.
16 races or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact thing is, but I
Who
mean,
knows?
yeah,
But no, the one thing I was actually hoping for with the announcement, I was really hoping that with this doubleheader, that would mean, hey, Xfinity trucks, ARCA, they really can't all run at the same track, so why not move them to a different part of the schedule and use another Matco track that they used to run and everybody loves, South Boston.
that would
Uh,
be awesome.
that would be awesome, but then
I don't see it.
but the issue is that South Boston doesn't have safer barriers, and two, they're still they're still under the 5-year agreement, and it said within tracks, uh, that have signed contracts with. So even though they've signed with Matco, they can't use South Boston.
It would be really cool. Um, and I know it'd probably be hard for them to do considering the proximity, but I think it would be cool if they went down the 2006 route and went to Martinsville and had, which I know that would conflict with the Truck Series because they run there in the spring and the fall, but to have ARCA, trucks, and Xfinity at Martinsville.
Well, a compromise could be that you could take one of the Truck Series Martinsville dates and move it to, say, another Virginia-based track that they used to go to until about 2005.
Richmond, yeah.
Yeah, you could always do that. It's criminal that it's not on the schedule anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they went to tracks like Richmond. They went to tracks like Darlington that they don't go to anymore. They don't even go to Auto Club anymore, which is kind of.
They kicked off Auto Club.
Yeah, I don't understand that, to be
They used to hold
honest.
their championship finale at Auto Club.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you how. I think it's more NASCAR wants everybody to finish at the same racetrack, same everywhere. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it should be staggering it. Have them at their own championship venues.
Yeah, I mean, the Truck Series race on Friday at Homestead and the Truck Series champion, it's overshadowed by the Xfinity race. It's overshadowed by the Cup race. Now, yeah, it's cool that they're all finishing on the same weekend at the same track. You can celebrate them all together. It makes it a little bit easier, but I think it also takes a little bit away from those champions as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Brett Moffitt drove his tail off and won that championship in the trucks, and same with Reddick. I mean, Reddick drove the wheels off that thing and won the championship, but it was overshadowed by Joey Logano winning the Cup championship, his first Cup championship.
Yeah.
Even though the Cinderella story of Brett Moffitt, or the where did he come from of Tyler Reddick, was arguably a better storyline.
I think, yeah, the Brett Moffitt storyline, I think, was because Brett Moffitt could easily be in the Cup Series right now. Like, look back to when he ran for MWR, those couple races that he did in 2015, and I think he had a top 10 at Atlanta.
Finished 8th at Atlanta.
Yeah, he ran top 5 at one point in that race. And let's not forget, that was the year that MWR got canned. Like, at the end of the year, they closed up shop. I mean, I think Boyer missed the playoffs. I mean, it was a terrible year for that organization. And Brett Moffitt got a top 10 in one of the only races that he ran for them.
Yeah, it was arguably a great run for him. There's no question about it. He drove the wheels off that thing.
So this is a good point for us to jump into our next topic, and it's something that's got a lot of people fired up, and it's not just one opinion. There's I think two different sides to this matter, and it's gotten a lot of people fired up. Group qualifying in the Cup Series, and I think John and I are pretty much on the same side in terms of that. NASCAR, I mean, we talked about it in Stop and Go that they're considering going back to single car qualifying. One thing that really irritates me about this, about group qualifying, is the yes people of the media, the networks, the teams, the drivers, that the PR angels, I guess you could call them, the people that are like, well, this puts on a show, it's excitement, it's what the fans want, and if that's what the fans want, I'm okay with it. And honestly, they could not be more wrong, because it's qualifying. All right, where in what other forms of racing is qualifying meant to be a show? It's not supposed to be a show. You're supposed to set the field for the race, which is the show. Are we now going to send everyone out all at once and practice to see how many we wreck to put on a show? Is that what it's about now? Is that what racing in NASCAR has become? Are we all about the show aspect? Because if you want a show, you can go watch WWE. If you want to see a race, tune into the race on Sundays. If you want to see qualifying, tune into qualifying on Fridays, because that's what you're going to see. It's not meant to be a show, because what it's been the last couple weeks with group qualifying, it's been a dumpster fire.
Oh, I completely agree with you with the way qualifying has gone for NASCAR ever since they introduced group qualifying. To me, NASCAR is always in search of trying to make it a show, but it's a sport. When it comes down to it, it is a sport. Yes, every other racing series in the world, most of them, have group qualifying. But you want to know what the difference is? They don't do ovals. They do road courses. So it makes sense to have group qualifying. Now, with this package, you could blame the package all you want, or the drivers, or it doesn't matter. The package is conducive to this. People don't want to start 50th on Sunday when they know that if they're the only car out, or they don't necessarily have a car with a lot of straight line speed, that they don't want to start 30th. They want to get the best track position because it's essential with this package, and they want to get the best pit stall, which is essential for track position. So you can't blame the drivers for it. NASCAR's Band-Aid, like I think I said last week, was ripped off, hair and all, this week as they sat at the end of pit road. People blocked people. There were questionable no penalties. It was just a mess, an absolute mess of a time. Now the other two series, Xfinity and Trucks on speedways, they do single car qualifying. They have. I don't know what the difference is with the Cup Series, because it's, quote, the Cup Series. We gotta qualify, or we gotta, put on a show for the fans. It's the show aspect is, I don't like it.
No.
It's just, it comes off as ingenuine, and it just comes off as a gimmick. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's, the fans, quote unquote, are making all the calls with this. To me, it seems like a TV friendly type of aspect, because you don't have to have an hour and a half qualifying session. You can have an hour qualifying block on TV. To me, it should just go back to single car qualifying, like it used to be.
Well, they keep reminding us it's what the fans want. It's what the fan. I don't know many people who are saying yes, let's do this every week. I mean, there's obviously people that like this, but I don't know of a large group of people that are fans of this. And honestly, I don't think. I mean, if you took a vote of 500 people, I could bet the majority would say that they want single car qualifying back, or at least a more suitable format for qualifying, that it's not a circus. And there's two things that I'll say to this. All right. Single car qualifying versus group qualifying. All right. So when you had single car qualifying, and we were talking about this earlier, John. You were talking about something that Dr. Jerry Punch said.
Yes.
When you had single car qualifying, all right, every car was talked about. Every driver, every team, they were talked about. Every sponsor got its exposure for the minute and a half, 2 minutes, whatever it was that they were on track, from the time they left pit road to the time that they took the checkered flag. It was about them and just them. And some of those smaller teams, it was a big deal because they weren't going to be talked about on Sundays.
Yeah.
So it was a big deal.
I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, the Coca-Cola 600 in 2005. I remember the 50 car was qualifying with Jimmy Spencer. It was Arnold Motorsports. Never heard of that team. It was a little no-name team, but I got a little snippet about the team and how Jimmy Spencer. I was a new fan at the point. I didn't even know Jimmy Spencer had ran previous to 2005. I just thought he was some washed-up driver. But no, he had a pretty successful Cup career, and was pretty successful in the modified division. Didn't know that. But those little snippets, though, in qualifying, led me into, he actually did more than just run for a, back-of-the-line team.
And I think it's worth pointing out, if you're talking bang for your buck, whether it's a fan watching or whether it's the networks, you're gonna get. I think you'd get more out of single car qualifying versus Group Q, because everybody's sitting at the end of pit road, and literally all the announcers are gonna be talking about. Well, they're all sitting at the end of pit road. Oh, they're still sitting at the end of pit road. Well, nobody's gone yet. There's a minute left. Well, they're still sitting there. Are they gonna move yet? Oh, well, time ran out. Nobody made a lap. That's all it is. All right. There's no stories. There's no backstories. There's no, this guy's got a new sponsor this week, and this sponsor's based out of this town, and whatever. You don't hear that with group qualifying, and it's kind of sad. And we really need to get back to single car qualifying. I think even if you went to like a staggered, like if you wanted to speed up the process, like a staggered single car qualifying, and even with this format, it wouldn't be single car. Having one car go out and, basically when they're on the other end of the track, send the other car out. So you have two cars on track at once, qualifying. They're on opposite ends of the track. The only problem I think you could see with this is if one of them wreck, then the other would have to void its lap, which that would be a problem. But that's another trial and error thing I guess they could try out if they really wanted to.
To me, I think the best option would be rapid fire. But the question I have is that would it be a one lap type of thing or a 2-lap thing?
It should be one lap, honestly.
So, yeah, the best way to go about it would be send a guy out, have him go and start his lap. Once he starts his lap, next car goes, and then just keep going. And just make it a single round.
Yeah.
That way it's the quickest that it could be. I don't agree with the whole, we need multiple rounds of qualifying. To me, that just runs in the same issue that we had before. It's long and drawn out for no reason.
Yeah. Well, and really the only reason you could justify having multiple rounds of qualifying or even having more than one lap of qualifying is for those teams that need those extra laps to get up to speed. Like back in the early 2000s where you would actually see pickup on the second lap versus the first lap, depending on the setup, depending on the track conditions, whatever. So you'd see guys pick up speed on that second lap. So having that second lap was beneficial. But, when you're in the Cup Series and you've got 37, 36 cars showing up every week, nobody's getting sent home. So having those extra laps or extra time or extra rounds, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So I think it's a good transition jump into another NASCAR topic. And in fact, has to do with the Cup Series. Hendrick Motorsports, which honestly in the last 2 to 3 years have fallen off the map completely. The only driver from their camp to win a race last year was Chase Elliott, and he won 3 races. Jimmy Johnson is still on a winless streak, and he's coming up on 2 full years, I think, in terms of winless streak. Alex Bowman has yet to win a race for Hendrick, same as William Byron in his second year. However, Jimmy Johnson did win the pole at Texas, and we saw, actually, I believe he was fastest in 2 of the practice sessions, on top of leading some laps.
He was fastest in all practice sessions, led every single qualifying session, and led every statistic in final practice, which means a single lap, 5 lap, 10 lap, 15, 20, 25 lap averages.
So good to see those guys, at least for Texas, get back on the right track. Because they've been under a lot of scrutiny not just the last couple weeks, really the last year or so, because Hendrick was the team to beat. You know, if you're setting a team up on a pedestal and you're comparing your team to another team, Hendrick was that team. You know, not just in the 2010s, it was in the 2000s, it was in the 1990s. They were the golden standard, whether it was Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. There's years you had Earnhardt Jr. 2014, Earnhardt Jr. won 4 races. Then 2015, he won 3 races. Casey Kane, when he first came to Hendrick, he lit the world on fire. For years, they've had multiple cars running the top 10, top 5, win races. They were a stacked team for the longest time, even if they'd have a weak car or two. They were unbeatable. And recently, they haven't been that strong. There have been races where they've struggled to put cars in the top 10, top 15. So to see them have a little bit of a comeback and really did not seem like a fluke, it seemed like raw speed. I think that's great to see.
Absolutely. You have fan favorite Chase Elliott on the team. You have the savvy 7-time champion that I think is starting to, fans are starting to appreciate now, similar to Jeff Gordon later in his career. You have young William Byron, who's, kind of a PR darling, and then you have Bowman, who's just, he's chill. He's chill. And you have a really great group of drivers there, and you have the pieces there. I think what was off last season, and even the start of this season, was just Chevrolet and their performance, because once they introduced the Camaro, performance just, it hit a brick wall. Chevrolet was not contending for anything, but now it seems like they've fixed some of their aero deficiencies from the Fords and Toyotas. They're starting to make a comeback from the looks of things.
Well, I think it even stretched back into 2017. I don't think it was just the Camaro, because correct me if I'm wrong. I think there were 3 drivers from the Chevrolet camp to win races in 2017. Johnson, Larson, and Austin Dillon on fuel mileage in the Coke 600. I think those are the 3 guys.
No, there were 5.
There were 5, okay.
There was Newman at Phoenix.
That's right. Newman on strategy, and
Casey Kane at
the Brickyard
Indianapolis. So there was a little bit struggle there, but
yeah, they weren't a strong team. Larson was their A guy, really, and other than that, Chase Elliott had some pretty decent showings. Didn't pick up any wins. He ran pretty strong though. Other than that, though, Chevy fell off the map. And they don't have the numbers that they used to have. Think of the 2000s. They had Joe Gibbs Racing, they had Hendrick, they had RCR, and they had some smaller teams as well. Roush was really the only big Ford team. Penske was Dodge, Evernham was Dodge.
And then once Toyota came in, it was like Michael Waltrip Racing for a year, and then
Gibbs.
Yeah.
But even still, after losing Gibbs, Chevy was a top team. They picked up Stewart-Haas Racing, was a strong team. And they had 4 cars before they switched to Ford. And now the tables have turned. You've got Ford has really 8 strong teams. 7, I guess, if you exclude Menard, because he's a Penske car, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. They have all of Team Penske and all of Stewart Haas. And I think what benefited the Mustang is that they knew the package right away, so they could design their car based on the package. I think with Chevrolet, they got caught out by a rules change before they announced the Camaro, and they had to change it, and of course that affected aero balance and aero numbers. Which I think there's been a little too much aero shenanigans since the 2016 Toyota got introduced.
Yeah, well, and back to 2016. I mean, I think that's when the first rumblings and complaints you saw of, what are they doing underneath the car? Oh, well, okay, aerodynamics underneath the car, the underbody. That's okay. That's a big thing now. Remember back to 2014 when was it not like fender flares?
Yeah.
Like where they'd pull out the side skirts, and was a huge amount of downforce and side force. Not only that, but it was really a weapon because you could door somebody, it'd probably cut their tire. But a lot of these teams have been getting away with a lot of stuff in terms of aerodynamics, and unless they're able to police what you can do underneath the car, I think this is the kind of racing we're going to see, regardless of the package.
Which, hopefully with the Gen 7, they address these issues. But, getting back to Hendrick Motorsports, because that was the topic we were discussing, I really hope this isn't a fluke. I'll be honest, Chase is a favorite driver of mine. No, he's not the same. He's not the same as Junior, of course. It's kind of hard to replace Redneck Jesus, but it's always nice to have, somebody to root for, and it's kind of hard to root for somebody. And this might sound like a little bit of crying, but it's hard to root for somebody when the team's not at their A game.
Yeah, it's. I mean, think of it like stick and ball sports. If you're, and I know I'm probably gonna get a lot of crap from this because I know a lot of Browns fans, and they're probably the most loyal fans. But Cleveland fans, how many years did you guys have to deal with sub 500 seasons? I know the pain. I know how you guys feel, but years like that, I'm sure there's a lot of Browns fans that turned off the TV. I'm sure there's Junior's last year that he ran in Cup. I'm sure a lot of people wanted to turn off the TV because he wasn't doing as well. You look at Hendrick now. I'm sure a lot of people are having a hard time watching these whole races because there have been a couple races where they're struggling to put cars in the top 10.
Yeah, and I get that from fans. If your team's not doing well, you'll kind of just lose interest in it. I mean, I'll be the first to admit when Denver kind of fell off the map after their Super Bowl run, I kind of stopped watching a little bit. Now I still follow them, but I don't follow them as religiously as I did. Yeah, that's to be expected with anybody. People like winners. That's in our nature. But hopefully the performance of Hendrick Motorsports this weekend is indicative of what's to come for them.
Yeah, definitely. Because you look at, Kevin Menderin, new crew chief for Jimmy Johnson, Chad Canales now having William Byron. I think, the tables could start to turn. So that's good for them. A lot of exciting things to come in for the rest of 2019, I think, for NASCAR. Leading into 2020. That's going to do it for this episode. John, tell us where we can find you on social media.
You can find me on Twitter, JSPoolIII. Did have a gaming channel, kind of taking that on hiatus, so I won't plug that.
Make sure you guys follow me on Twitter and Instagram @ZBCannon4. Make sure you guys check out my karting page on Facebook @Zach Buchanan Racing. And make sure you guys subscribe to my karting channel. Just my name, Zach Buchanan. Make sure you guys follow the podcast on Twitter @ThePitLimiter. Make sure you guys subscribe to us on YouTube. Maybe you missed an episode and you want to just go back and listen to it. We do upload our episodes to YouTube. Also, make sure you guys like us on Facebook, because we do premiere our episodes live on Facebook, and maybe you don't want to listen on those apps. We're on every major podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're probably on it. So make sure, if you want to listen to us, there's a lot of different ways you can listen to us, and we can't wait to see you next week on Tuesday for episode 9 of the Pit Limiter Podcast. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week.